Welcome, everyone. Can I just say I'm super excited to have this conversation with you? I,
I'm always so happy to get to talk to
I,
you.
know-
I was just listening to our podcast interview again today to get pumped up.
I know. And so, like, I find that this is our continuation because we promised to have one. And so, this is
Hmm.
the part two. Welcome, everyone, into the space. My name is Katherine Searcy. I'm the host of the Money Bay podcast, where we just want to create safe spaces for individuals to really begin to heal their relationships with money through a psycho-spiritual lens. And if you haven't guessed, I'm a social worker, therapist, so it never leaves me. And I'm super excited to have this conversation with the money witch herself, Jessie Susannah Karnatz. And I just want to take an opportunity to introduce her. And we're going to delve into her beautiful book, Money Magic, tonight. Um, the Money Witch, she brings capitalism critical, shame free education to healers, hustlers, and creatives in order to catalyze change in their financial lives. She believes in healing our finances will bring blessings to our lives, our lineages, and our communities. She offers education, money magic products, which I still need to order, and intuitive financial coaching online and in the Bay Area, and does it all with impeccable business lady style. Okay. And all of this is encompassed in her beautiful book, Money Magic, which I just have to tell the story because the way we connected was just so divinely aligned. And so I was on an Instagram live and I sporadically came up with a book club just out of the blue. And I just ordered your book. And it was in my, you know, how you have the stacks of Amazon packages you never open. So I was like on this IG live, just like I know I have books I've ordered and I haven't read. And I opened up the box, and yours was the first one. And I said, we should use this for book club, Money Magic. And so I posted it. And then you were so gracious just to offer to come into one of our book club spaces. It just gave us so much wisdom and so much love. And everyone was just so impressed by you. And we just felt the connection that we just kept the dialogue going. So I am just very excited and honored to be holding this space with you tonight.
It was such a lovely experience to get to talk to your book club group, and yeah, it felt good. I feel like every time we talk, it feels interesting and it also feels good.
Yeah, and I just appreciate the way that you create. I feel like you create safe space around money and finances because you read a lot of books and you hear a lot of speakers within this world. And I don't feel attacked, but it just feels like there's something that I'm always deficient in, like is there something I'm
Mhm.
not doing? And just being in your energy and just in reading your book, you feel held in the book. You feel supported in the book. You don't feel like, I'm like, down, I'm like way down on this list of shit that I haven't done.
Yeah.
And so it's really beautiful to hold this space. And just for those just tuning in, the intention of the space tonight is to really delve into how we can take some beautiful aligned action steps. Because I know a lot of times we're always kind of taking in information, and we don't know what to do with it next. And so tonight we're going to really help you cultivate a plan of action that's, loving and supportive and compassionate, and not a to-do list, which you talk about in your book. Like, let's not like just start checking items off the list. So that's the intention. Feel free to drop in. You should be able to see in the lower right hand bottom of your pages, whether you're on your laptop or on your devices, I ask a question. Feel free to drop questions on there and I'll check in and make sure that we get to as many as we can because we only have an hour and us girls, we like to talk. But we're going to try to like see some of those questions in throughout the conversation. So don't be shy. So I want to start with, okay, two things I want to start with.
Cool.
I know you're a astrological junkie like me.
Mhm.
And if you're just coming through, for those who don't know, we're in this Lionsgate portal, and you don't need to know the logistics of it. Just know it's supposed to be a really potent time for manifestation. So people usually take this time to release things that are no longer serving them and get very clear about their next steps, right? Their next action steps. And so as we're harnessing this energy around the Lionsgate portal, Money Glitch, why do we have so much resistance around taking action steps when it comes to our finances? I feel like we'll read all the books, we'll watch all of the YouTube videos, we'll do all of the things and take in so much, but then we kind of get stuck in actually creating a plan. Where do you think that resistance lies?
I think there's a couple things that come up immediately. One of them is making sure, in our financial lives that we're really doing these things for ourselves, that the point of motivation is authentic, is genuine. It's not to like be a good person or like I should be doing this. I should be an adult. I should be saving. These voices in our heads that kind of are internalized external voices. I'm trying to please the IRS, my parents, my dad, or, my partner, whoever it is. So I think it's worthwhile. Like if you want to do a little thinking, I did this in a group a month ago. And in my book club, I have a book club for my book where we're going through it, month by month, chapter by chapter. And we took some time to do journaling. Like when you think about being better with money, right? Like whose voice kind of pops up in your head, and people journaled on it. And I really noted that a lot of people said they were surprised by what came up when they really listened and did that journaling. So I think it's kind of like, when that many people say they feel surprised, like I'm like, oh, there's something in here that is potent and like worth doing. So I would, I think that's a little gem. So finding like the real desire from your real self, centering in yourself, because as long as you just feel like you're doing something because you have to or out of guilt, it's hard to want to do it, right? And then we often find ways to not do things we don't want to do. So that's just it, right? But the other thing that came up is like fear of failure, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, instead of taking action, why don't I just gather some more information? And this is good. It's like Lionsgate portal in the context of Leo season, right? So I think of every sign in dynamic relationship with the sign that's across the circle from it. Again, you don't have to know about this, but just sort of like every sign has a kind of like opposite sign. Leo is in relationship with Aquarius. And that kind of struggle between like Leo and Aquarius, like Leo is like, just take creative action, take action now, and you can iterate from there. Aquarius is like, don't do anything until you've got the perfect plan. So get more information. You're probably not ready to take action yet. This is just like a really great time. And I think personally, I think anytime's a great time to just take some kind of action, right? Not in a perfectionism, do the most, do it all, change the whole paradigm today, but like just something, and knowing that you can iterate from there and not being afraid to fail, to do something wrong, to look stupid, to feel stupid. Like, no one wants to feel like that, but it's a part of the process. I really appreciate and often lean into the Fool archetype in the tarot deck, because Fool's like, let's just start the journey. Let's just try. And I think people, I don't know, like, it's like, I'm kind of feeling that lately, like a sort of like, why not try? Why not try, right?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think the Fool was one of the archetypes you had in step 7 of the book, because to me it's so attuned to Leo energy because it does take a level of courage, right, to kind of
Yeah.
take that step. And it's been interesting. I've been having these conversations with my clients this week around, what is your story around courage? Like, kind of focusing on the courageous steps that we take. And I think when we're talking about our finances, it's a big leap, because it's something we often hide from the
Yeah.
public eye. Yeah.
Curious, like generationally too, it seems like in a lot of people's like parents and grandparents generation, and at least in my family, there's a lot, I'm healing a lot around this. Like there's just, a lot of caution, a lot of conservatism, not politically necessarily, but just sort of like, and like, no, don't look foolish. Don't try things that, you might look stupid at, and don't like take a don't gamble your security. So I think it can be hard to just be like, well, I'm just gonna try. Like, what if we tried this cool project and it only lasted a year? It'd be like, well, at least that was cool that we tried. We tried to do it,
Yeah. So I'm skipping ahead because I actually did notes, which is like not like me, but I was like, I want to be
Yeah. Oh,
prepared
I
for
like
this.
it.
But I'm skipping ahead because I actually had a question around that. Oftentimes, I sit with people who struggle with that, right? Taking that leap and investing in themselves, whatever that investment is, whether it's them wanting to take a vacation or a retreat, wanting to maybe move into therapy or a coaching relationship, further their education, whatever it is. It's just like there's a part of them that's just like, I want to grow, I want to evolve, I really want to sit and be nurtured, right, and cared for. But then it is that voice, and I think it is generational, where it's just like, no, like that's not the way you use this money, right? You don't use this money to nurture yourself. You use this money to survive.
Yeah.
Like, have you sat in those spaces with people who struggle, kind of have that struggle with abundance versus maybe scarcity mindset, or just kind of like the generational conflict that happens when we are moving into like a higher consciousness and awareness of like I get to choose myself, I get to prioritize my needs versus having to focus on just kind of taking care of the bills?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I think especially um for people whose like lineage is been kind of on a trajectory of like move, upward class mobility, or
Mhm.
including immigrant families. I think because there's a lot of building in a lineage over time and investment forward. And so people, I feel like I see it the most with clients who have kind of family expectation of like, well, here's how we built you up, and then you have an obligation that's sort of being held by a collective, and it's not necessarily your individual choice. So I think like that's a major theme. Um, it's fear too, right? Like a lot of it's fear based. Our families want us to be okay.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
want us to be okay, and as a parent too, like some of it's selfish. You just want to feel like they're okay so you can move on with your life. Like, okay, I feel fine. I did a good job. Um, but that fear, fear and protection, right? Like it's like if you build your protective, like everyone has protective instincts, but like you should be able to build your own protective instincts around what your own genuine fears are, and not necessarily what other people's fears are, right? Like what kind of
Yeah.
protection you need for yourself and your own experience is not necessarily the same experience of protection that other people might need, including your parents, right? Or your grandparents. So, you know, just thinking about that. And I think it's difficult because when there is a difference of experience in a lineage, people don't think often ahead of time that even though this is a positive trajectory that everybody like wanted to happen, whether it was like upward class mobility, higher earnings status, etc., that there is going to be a process of alienation, right? So it's like, and part of alienation is like this experience of differentiation. So like, I think it takes a lot to be able to say like, I'm going to author my own story around money, like what feels true to me, what my values are, what feels possible to me, what feels important to me. And I love authority because it's like the author of your own story, right? About it. And I think there's a way to do that that's still respectful and responsible to a collective way of being. That's not just based in like individualism and kind of like, well, this is mine and I can do whatever I want. But that's interdependent rather than maybe like codependent, right?
Yes. And I feel like that's how we begin to heal the family cycles, right? Around money and finance, when we can hold both of those stories, right? I can create a story, and then hopefully my story helps to heal, right? Kind of the generational stories that have been told around money. So I think that's a great thing. And I have a follow-up question. We do have a question. I have a follow-up question into that before I go
Yeah.
into the chat. So I'm curious to know, what is the Money Wish's definition of financial stability?
Oh. I mean, to a certain extent, stability is a sensation,
Right.
right? It's a feeling, and it's like peace of mind, like things being, feeling calm and peaceful, and like you'll be supported no matter what. So for some people, I feel like that might not be a high number, right? It's like
Right.
they feel held in their needs. But I think it also means like not being in a kind of place of delusion about it either. Like, oh, I'm all good. And and then other people have to pick up the pieces, or you're like not holding your elder self by saving for the future or retirement or, those kinds of things. I think it's like having a grasp on responsibility, right? And like looking to make sure like you are being responsible to all the relations around you, and then understanding like what do you need in order to feel that sensation of peacefulness and being like supported, and there is a number, like it does match. It's not just like woo woo woo, right? It's like it matches to some actual numbers, and like, okay, that means to me I want to have X number amount saved for retirement, and I want to make sure I have, some people need to feel like, oh, I have a whole year of emergency expenses. Some people might need to only feel like, well, I have 6 months but I have access to credit, or, I know I have a backup plan, and that makes me feel stable. So I think like a sense of peacefulness, a sensation of support, and then like the actual numbers to back it up.
I love that because, I hear that a lot. People are just like, I need to feel financially stable. And, and then it's like, well, what does that mean for you? And a lot of times it's like, I need to, I need to get a promotion on the job. It's like, it's very kind of, it can be obscure at times, and it isn't so definitive. It's like, what number would it take, right, to regulate your nervous system, right? To let your nervous system
Yeah.
know that you're safe, right? Like, what does that look like? And I don't really think we've really taken the time to ask ourselves, like, is there, like, I don't even know if I have a number. Like, I don't.
Well, that's a thing that people are like, I'm not making enough. I don't have enough to
Right.
feel this way. But I'm like, there is an enough. So what is it, and taking the time to figure it out is kind of what we're talking about. And we want to talk about taking action because it's one of the last chapters in the book. My book goes through, it's a 7-step system to healing your finances, and step 7 is like take action, right? It's like take action, try, fail, try again, try some more. And it's like exactly the same thing in this moment. Like, move from it being an idea, I want to feel financially stable, I want to make more, into like the action of like, but then what? So then you can have a real relationship, a concrete material relationship, because ultimately money is material. It's the material realm, it's the earth realm, and it has to have a material, that sense of material security is really what you're seeking.
Yeah, that's so good. And just to follow that up, there was a quote in step 7 that I absolutely loved. And you said, your efforts are a spell, your efforts are a ritual. Pray with your efforts, manifest with your efforts. Right. I really love that because I feel like we do get very heady, like we kind of stay, like even whether we're spiritual or emotional, like kind of we stay in that realm of just like if I, pray, if I do altar work, if I talk to my ancestors, all of that, then that will be the work. But it's like you're even actually talking about the spirituality of the action, right? Because we always think of action more physical, like it's more, more of the physical world, like, that's the stuff I gotta like numbers and checkbooks and shit. I don't want to do that. Like I want to keep it light. Like I want to talk to my people. Like, everybody help me. Right. But being able to like know that your actions are also like it's just like it's spiritually aligned. Like it's part of the work that is a manifestation, right? Manifestation when we see it expressed in the physical realm. So
Well,
I love
help
that.
you what? Like, it's like you're praying, you're asking for support from the universe for what exactly? Like, right? Like, even
Right.
you have to figure that out. And I feel also, especially ancestors, it's like I've definitely kind of gotten that message from my ancestors, and I'm gonna bet that I'm not alone in it, which is like, yeah, we'll help you when you're also like helping yourself, yourself, like like we could help you, we can act through you, all of this kind of blessing, that's another, it's probably in the book somewhere, because it's in a lot of my work, is this idea of like, yeah, the blessing unfolds in your action, right? So it's like you have to make a space for the blessing to even unfold. So if you're like praying to get a new job, but then you're not like applying to jobs, like where would the blessing even unfold in your life? Like, I mean, yeah, it's like maybe, I guess a recruiter could email you or something, but I don't know. I'm like,
Possibly. And the miracles happen, right? They can kind of drop out of nowhere and just like, oh, well, thank you. But oftentimes it does take a bit of inspired action on your part to get the
yeah,
ball rolling.
because even that, they're probably approaching you because you had a great like LinkedIn profile or something. If you
Yeah,
hadn't
exactly.
put that out there, like, it's like if you have no website, no LinkedIn profile, didn't put the application in, like, how are you going to get this job? So, I mean, it's just one example, right?
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so funny. I was talking to a client earlier, and she was talking about how she's invested so much, right? She's invested so much in her business, like in her work and everything, and she hasn't, received a return. I was just like, because you don't have anything to get a return on yet. Like you haven't launched anything, right? Like you haven't created that space, like you were saying, you haven't created that space to receive the return on investment. Once you create that space, it'll come, right? Because you've sowed the seeds. And those are spiritual principles. Okay, I want to get to this question, y'all.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get too distracted. Bree asked, what are some steps we can begin to take to repair our relationship with money? Let's say this week. She actually put a time, or they actually put a timeline on it. What can she do this week?
I think like number one, and there's a little, in the book, there's like journal prompts, there's mindfulness moments, and there's also, it's like, heal your finances homework things, kind of just like, just do this one task. But I really believe in like the building of momentum, right? And the building of financial self-esteem, right? The more that we do, when we notice ourselves showing care and showing up for ourselves, we feel better about ourselves.
Mhm.
So I feel like there's one homework assignment in the book that's like, literally just clean up one thing. Just clean up one thing this week. So like if that's, paying a parking ticket that's overdue, or that's, that you owe library fines, or that, and maybe you don't have money to pay off a bill. So maybe then it's like, I want to go through my expenses from the last 2 months and see like, how much am I spending on groceries? So, cause I'm kind of having a feeling of like questioning myself of like, maybe maybe this is more, I'm spending more here than I want to be. Just one thing, and you'll feel good that you got one thing done.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good check mark.
Mhm.
So let's check. So one thing I wanted to address, I really appreciate the vulnerability that you have around money. And, and we capture that in the book, in Money Magic. You really feel into that. I'm thinking about, I think it was in step 7, where I think it was a section around try and fail, where you talked about you had a client who,
Yeah.
it was her tax preparer, and she wound up, getting audited by the IRS. And she was just like, I'm good. Like, no, right? And just kind of how you sat with that. I was curious to know, like, how were you always this vulnerable, like, in just kind of expressing and talking about your relationship with money, or did that kind of transpire over time? How did you get to a place that you became more open, just kind of just being able to be transparent as you are?
I think it's always been my tendency to be open. I have a lot of Aries in my chart. I mean, I have some Scorpio too, so I can be guarded, but I think, my greatest desire is to really be known, and to be like loved in being known. Um I don't I've always been a person, I don't like superficiality. I mean, I like fluffiness, like I love like a gossip magazine, or, like a rom com, whatever. Like fluffy is fun, fun. Um, so it's like not everything has to be like, we don't have to go to like the depths of the underworld in everything all the time, but I just want things to have some depth and like realness to them. Otherwise, they just don't feel interesting to me. It doesn't keep my attention. Um, so I've just kind of always operated at that whatever frequency that is, that's the one.
No, that's beautiful because a lot of times, like, we are very guarded, especially when it comes to money. Like money, I feel like is a secret in the closet that no one, wants to share. We don't, necessarily have language. I remember when I was still in the workforce, like I got to a point that I would start telling people what my salary
Yeah.
was. Because I was curious about what other people. I was like, well, I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours, right? And to me, it was empowering because if we're kept in the dark, how do we know, like, how to advocate for ourselves, right? And I just feel like it's always been cloaked. And so I just think it's exciting that we're getting into a place that we can be more transparent around it because we heal in the light. Like, it's kind of hard when we're kind of keeping things tucked and buried.
Yeah, I think about it sometimes because I think it can be alienating to some people, and I think, it depends too, like especially in like, cross-cultural interactions. Like I feel like sometimes it's alienating because certain, cultures are like a lot more like, you don't just Like I'm like straight shooting all the time. And, you know, I feel like sometimes people are like in friendships or whatever, people are like, it's, you know, like I just am not going to communicate like that. Or it can be abrasive, you know, it feels abrasive or, you know, rude or something. But and talking about money, right? I mean, it's complicated too, right? Like it's a taboo topic, but I want to know. I want to know, you know, like when I wrote my book, I went around everywhere, like talking to people. Like I'm always like, this is how much I got for my book advance. Like how much, you know, I want to know, like everyone I know who wrote a book, I'm like, I want to know, how much did you get? How did you negotiate it? And I want to tell people my stuff too, so that they can go in there informed. I'm an Aries, so I'm like armed with the information, you know, informed with the information. Yeah, to just like be empowered. And I think also I've gotten a lot, you know, a lot of my business has been built off social media, specifically Instagram, and a lot of my, you know, brand, for better or worse, right? Like myself, my professional self, there's always been like a vulnerability to it. And I have found that that is what people respond to the absolute most. Like the moments where I'm just like, this is what I'm upset about, or like, this is what I'm struggling with, or like, I'm feeling really rough about this, or like, you know, even vulnerability in terms of like, you know, I'm often, not often, but sometimes like, you know, wearing something pretty scandalous or whatever, which to me, that is a vulnerability to be like, you know, yeah, I do whatever, you know, like you could see it, the cellulite and the whatever, right? Like all of it. So I think people feel, I get so much like, oh yeah, me too. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for saying that. I needed to hear that. I relate to that. And that feels like the most humanizing way to have an experience of on social media or like on the internet, right? Like that's the most, to me, that's the most like real human connectivity that I see on the internet. It's always built, it's generally built on vulnerability. So, you know, I want people to connect to the work of the book, right? In order to experience healing. I want people to experience healing. And I feel like offering vulnerability and, you know, openness around my journey is humanizing, right? Because so much money discourse is authoritative and therefore, you know, sometimes patronizing. And I don't want to be a financial authority. I want to be a financial translator, a financial guide. As someone who's been like, I have navigated some of this territory myself. And I have walked with many, many people as they have navigated this territory. And so I can help you walk it too, you know, and not like you were saying in the beginning, and not like, here's where you're not sufficient.
Right, right, right. I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about the book is that, again, you allow people to see you, right? Leonian themes, right? Just having the courage to be seen, because it does normalize the experience, right? You don't feel like you're just this outlier out here and everyone else is doing great, right? Because I love that you're just kind of like, I'm still working on, you know, my money goals too. Like I'm still working on my financial stability too. Like I'm still working on these things too. Like I haven't evolved. And I think it gives people permission to say like, oh, that was the experience of the book club. I think that was one of the takeaways, is just like, oh, I don't have to be the expert. Like I don't have to achieve, right? or get to this status in order to do the thing, right? Like I don't have to know everything about this subject in order to write the book, right? Or to create whatever. It's like, and I just think there's such beauty in that because it's not often seen.
Yeah, we were you and I were saying, I'm going to citing us on our podcast interview, which I was just listening to earlier. We were kind of saying like there's the process and the destination, whatever, the journey and the destination, the process and the results, the achievement and the process of achieving it. And it's like you have to build the healing and the peace and all those things into the process because, like we're not guaranteed to get to the goal. Our job is to have a human experience in our body, which is like the process of every day, not to like hit the accomplishment. We're not like born with a to-do list, check it off, check it off, check it off. We're born, I think my spiritual set of beliefs and, astrological inclination is that we're born with, a kind of curriculum and a direction that we, should be headed.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh, here, you hit these goals.
Yeah. I feel that. Speaking of which, there are two things I wanted to bring up tonight that are also found in your book, and it's around grace and redemption. And so I was interested to know, like, do you have a personal money narrative around how, I think Grace is very feminine. I call her, she's a she. Like, I don't know, I have not had a chance to ask Grace her pronouns, but I'm calling her she. But how has Grace kind of showed up for you? Whether it's something of recent or whatever is the first memory that pops up for you that has really presented herself when it comes to your money narrative.
It's funny. It's hard for me to sort of go anywhere with Grace. When Grace comes up for me, it's like a family name. My grandmother's name is Grace, and my son's middle name is Grace. And it's just like, I don't know, I feel it in this really kind of embodied way. I've definitely experienced Grace like in different areas of my life as of late, but I'm trying to think of like a way that I've experienced financial grace. I mean, honestly, I feel like an experience of financial grace I had in the last year was getting an SBA loan, like an EIDL loan, because I feel like it was like, it's funny to be like, the United States government gave me the gift of financial grace, but it gave me some spaciousness to like rest and, not have to grind so hard and to sort of build and invest in different ways. And I feel like that was an experience, it felt like an act of grace to me.
That's a beautiful act of grace.
Yeah.
To be able to just offer yourself sabbatical. Was it a sabbatical?
Not necessarily intentionally. It's been more like burnout recovery, where I've just been like, it's not explicit sabbatical. It's more just like permission to like narrow down as much as I could and just be like, do less. It gave me a lot of permission to do a lot less.
As entrepreneurs, we need that because it is like we can, that grind culture.
The more you let go, the more you kind of feel like, actually, I could just let go of more.
Like, I don't want to do anything. You go from all the things to, I don't want to do nothing. Okay. I just want to sit here and sip a margarita.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that recently, and I know you and I have even talked about it a couple of times. Like, people are quite overwhelmed by information right now. And that's one of the reasons why we were like, let's talk about taking action, because the action helps you to, process, metabolize like the information. We're all like very overwhelmed with information. And when I was thinking about it a little bit more after we talked about it, I'm curious if, some of just like the current state of, dealing with public health emergency, repeated public health emergency, multiple acts of violence, things that are like taking people, government conditions that are taking life, right? I was wondering if it's kind of giving all of us a little bit more of a like life is short mentality, just kind of like, oh, like what do I really want to do? It's almost like we're all kind of having a little like reckoning, middle-aged, like midlife crisis, like all together. Like, what do I want to do with my life? And like, is it this, So I think there's more of it, of that, like energy in general.
No, I get it. I mean, it's very Aquarian, right? We're still in the age of Aquarius. So it's very Aquarian to be like, what? Like, this is not it. Like, whatever we've been doing, this isn't it. But I do think we are coming into like our own personal reckonings of like, how do we want to live our life? Not like how we want to, make money to pay bills. Because honestly, I know for my generation, I'm kind of in between generation, X and millennials. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, it was very targeted and focused on like, go to school, get a degree, get a job, like a good paying job, so you can pretty much pay bills. Or it's like, so you can buy a house, you can buy the things, and so you can pay bills. And I think people are just like, I just don't want to live my life to pay bills. I want to actually live my life. And what does that look like? And so I think we've been seeded a lot of grace, like over like this pandemic era, still to be continued. But I think we've been seeded a lot of grace. In the midst of kind of all of the changes we've been experiencing.
I see that. I feel that too.
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, for those who are still just came on, might be sitting just like, get to it. Can I ask a question? Yes, you can ask a question. Feel free to drop in because I am mindful of the time and we're going to start to wrap up. And don't mess with me because I'll ask all the questions because they can go on for days. So feel free to pop your questions in if you have anything for the Money Wish, whatever it is, like use this space, especially since we're still in this Lionsgate portal.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, I'm going to skip through. I wanted to know, how do you sit with people in times of inflation and recession? Like, because those are the buzzwords right now, which kind of have people clutch their pearls, hold their chest. Like, when we were talking about earlier, our nervous system, right? It ramps up our anxiety. How do you sit with people, when we start to talk about inflation and recession? Like, what do you generally have overall guidance for them? Or how do you begin to move with them in that healing process when it comes to their money, when we kind of have these, bigger global structures in play?
I think, it's like we're in the mindset game somewhat, both of us, right? And that's that psycho spiritual lens. And, it's very important to me. And, I know to you as well, like when we're talking about mindset, it's also important to make sure we're holding in the other hand, like, no one's suffering is trivial, right? And when things, when systemic conditions change, like the fear is activated that there will be more suffering, right? And that's not, you can't necessarily like mindset your way out of that, right? On the other hand, what is your sphere of agency? And just being like, making sure that you're like inhabiting your sphere of agency to the edge. Because a lot of times, it's easier to live like a little bit contracted in than it is to be like constantly pushing on that edge. But pushing on that edge is going to get you the closest to success, whatever that means to you. right? The closest to like a full life or an embodied experience, an actualized experience. So I think like in any moment, including, inflation, recession, in any moment, just really making sure to like try to shift from fear about like what is going to impact you into a space of like what is your sphere of agency, just like
I
how
love
much space of agency do you have, and really like going up to that edge. And for me also, and again, not ever to discount like large scale human suffering or to discount like a place of privilege that I'm speaking from. But I think that a tool that works for me in times that feel scary or feel contracted, right? Which is really, that's like what this is, like a contracted feeling, is real deep time perspective.
Yes.
Like just like, okay, yes, like this is happening. This is happening right now. It could even happen for 10 years, right? Like if we're like, okay, think about whatever, you know what I mean? Like 2008 or the
Right.
80s or the 20s or what, just to be like, yes, these things happen. They happen for periods of time. And then time moves on. And then if you look all over the world, and this is like, get into that Pisces, just kind of like, wow, but it's like, if you look all over the world, it's like these patterns happen in different places at different times. And really all we have to do is just show up for this period of time that we've been allotted. Like, that's it. We're not guaranteed that the period of time we're alive for is going to be, all good. Like,
Yeah.
and if we live a long life, God willing, then probably in the period of like, in human existence, like there will be times of difficulty within that. So it's just like,
Yeah.
this is a time of potential difficulty. It's a time of challenge. And that doesn't mean it's not going to take you out. It's just going to
Yeah.
be challenging. And you might not even actually know in what specific way it's going to be challenging. And as we experience challenges, we integrate the solution. I think the tarot card I was looking at is like Six of Swords, if anyone out there is like a tarot person. So it's like, the reading I was doing on it was like, you had something that felt really challenging, but now you've kind of integrated that thing was challenging. And so it doesn't feel so challenging anymore. So if that's like, oh, well, gas costs whatever, and I was used to driving around, however much I wanted, but maybe I need to like do some thinking on like, okay, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to go down to one car, or we're going to, whatever, we're going to make it work. After a while, it's just like, yeah, well, then now this is how it is. Like change is a challenge, right? Like that's how it was. Now this is how it is. And then there'll be some other way that it is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just that, we're okay. We're resilient.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. And we're amazingly adaptable. Like, we adapted to wearing masks, like in a couple, well, some of us,
Yeah.
everyone has them. But, for the most part, people adapted to a different way of life pretty quickly. And just because it happened, say you experienced like the 2008, crash or whatever. It's just like, it doesn't mean it's going to look the same. Because I think, we're automatically triggered. And it's just like, oh my God, it's going to look like this, going to look like it did a decade ago. And that's not necessarily the case either. It's just like, how can we see, like, I was sitting here listening to you. I was wondering just like, all this could serve, right? Like, with inflation and gas prices going up, how is that serving, right? People are starting to downscale, right? They're starting to get rid of cars, right? We needed it. Our plan is just like, thank you, please get rid of a car if you can, right? And so like, there are ways that this can potentially serve and help and not always harm. And I think sometimes we always kind of hear these terms and we think, it's going to come to, get us, it's going to come to attack, it's going to come to take something away from us. But sometimes it can also add something to us.
Yeah. Well, that, it's like a lot of times too, or sometimes like part of the suffering is not what's happening, it's the gap between what our expectation was and what's happening.
Mm.
So it's like, and that's a difficult thing. And I think it's like pretty close to the beginning of the book, talking about like this idea, like these myths, what are really like colonial mythologies of like the American dream, which is a colonial mythology, which says, like we were saying, in our generation, that Gen X, and it's like, okay, it's a guarantee, right? It's like you have this expectation. If you get good grade, you do your science fair project and you do your extracurriculars and you do everything you need to do to get into a good college, and then you get the degree, and then maybe you go to graduate school, and then you'll get a good job, and then you'll find somebody, and then you'll get a house, and you'll have retirement money, and then you'll go on cruises, and your grandchildren will gather around you, and you'll die a peaceful death. And it's like people are like, there's an entitlement. It's like a colonial entitlement. I expect that to happen. Which doesn't mean don't have expectations for yourself, but like maybe the expectations could be more flexible. Like, I would like to live a good life. So it's like, is it still going to be possible to live a good life? Yes, I think so. Is it going to be possible to live like the life that you felt entitled to receive, have already written for you? Maybe not. Can that be okay? The more okay you can get with that, the more okay you're going to feel.
That's a dope reframe, can I just say? That's good. That's good. Because then like it is like it kind of removes the weight, right? Like expectations can come with a lot of weight. It can be heavy to feel like you have to arrive at a certain point instead of just being with what's present, right? Like, for today, and in Reiki they have 5 principles, and each one starts just for today. Just for today, I will not be angry. Just for today, I will treat every living thing kindly. Just for today, I will be impeccable, right? Like it's just like just for this moment. I think it kind of like that reframe just kind of roots us back into the present moment. And usually in the present moment, there's not a whole lot going on. Like you're usually okay.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
makes me think of a kind of tie back to the sort of trying and perfectionism thing that we were talking about, where it's like, yeah, if you can just take a like, okay, like just for today, I'm gonna, do something positive with my money, my whatever, I'm gonna treat my finances really well, like just today.
Yeah.
That's manageable.
I love that. Okay, we have a question. Jordan asks, is there a money witch assignment for navigating money edges/hurdles in romantic partnerships? Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to recommend another book. But we're at a bookstore talk, so we all know we love books. There's a book called Financial Intimacy. The author's name is Jaquette Timmons, and she is an investment specialist and a financial planner who wrote a book about what does it mean to like build financial intimacy with a partner and with yourself, right? And just like doing your work, but in the context of money. So I would recommend that book.
I know that was a good one.
When I do couples coaching, I'm very into getting to the root of it. And I want people to like really like get very, very real with themselves and with each other. And then to take all the judgment out and just get solution oriented. And that's it, really. You know, a lot of the relationship struggles is resentment, frustrations, but you have to just totally accept that your partner is who they are, and ideally you're in a relationship where both people are striving for, also a framework of accountability and growth, right? And if you're with someone
Yeah.
that you don't trust that they're working on growth, then that's a problem, right? Or if you're not working on your growth, right? Like that's a problem, right? Because that's how we are accountable to each other in relating. But I would say, like a lot of stuff I see with money in couples is like one person trying to convince the other person that their way is better. And so that therefore they should do it like this.
Yes.
And using that kind of like patronizing or authoritativeness, of kind of like, well, this is inherently better because it's more in alignment with, whatever, what Dave Ramsey says or something. I don't know, like obviously like this is a better way to be about this, but I think it's like just radical acceptance of each other and then really being like, how are we going to solve this problem? How are we both going to show up to do the work of solving this problem together, whatever the conflict is or the challenge is. It's not always a conflict. Sometimes there's just a situational challenge that you guys need to get on the same team about solving.
I love it. We are wrapping up. 3 minutes. I just want to make sure if you have a question, pop it in, okay? Because if not, I'm going to ask. So, one final thought I have is around, we center money so much. Like money tends to be the center of like all of our decision making, all of our life mapping and planning. Like it's like money kind of just like takes up a lot of space. And I'm starting to experience more and more that money is here to serve. Like it's a tool, and it really is here to serve us, not to block us, not to kind of like hover over us, not to like it. I don't see it as the center. Do you find that you're centering kind of money, or is there something else that's in your center?
I feel like, I think energy is like in my center, I like to channel my energy towards things, and I like to channel my energy towards money. It's a place that I really am like interested in channeling my energy towards. But I would say, yeah, I think like the central premise of my life, also purpose.
Yeah.
It's like I'm centering money a lot in my life because this is the purpose that called to this is what I'm called to do with my life force, like my energy, is to sort of like channel it towards these goals. And, for me, my goals, my professional goals and my kind of purpose, spiritual purpose goals are aligned with each other. So it's like putting it, towards that. So I think alignment with purpose and, how am I using my life force? How am I using my energy? I think those are like at the center of it for me.
Agreed. Often, like I've been saying lately, like money comes to serve the sovereign one. Like I just really see money as a way to serve my life purpose, right? Like you're here to help me, towards continuing on the path of my purpose, right? Like
Yeah.
it's here to serve like the divinity, the sovereignty in each and every one of us. And like you were saying earlier, how do we like really, move into our own autonomy? Like how do we move into advocacy? How do we move into a place that we really move in our own power, right? Like
Yeah.
these things don't have to come and like, and dictate the way we move and live. Like we can actually operationalize, in our truth and our power, and still create some beautiful things, even in times of inflation and recession. Telling you, I'm just tired of hearing the words. I had to stop listening to the news and stuff because it's like, y'all need to find new words to use.
Also, I'm going to say, and this is my parting words, these economists do not know what they're talking about. It's not that they don't know what they're talking about. It's that they're only looking at limited information and they're slow to it. You know what I'm saying? So, and I even, there's like credible, or at least like very popular news sources that you can find that will say, like, economists are only looking at certain sets of numbers and then they're saying this is what that means, right? But I also saw all through pandemic, like, economists in the news being very slow to things like, oh, well, we're worried, there's a possibility that when we cut off the stimulus payments, people, like, that'll increase poverty, and I'm like, you guys are slow.
Thank you.
Like, sometimes it's just like common sense, so like a reminder that, like, when these things are being said, like inflation and recession, those are numbers of economic terms that describe certain mathematical equations that, like, a system has said this means this. It doesn't necessarily mean anything is really happening to you necessarily.
Yes.
So just to keep your common sense and to, like, remember that.
And the mic has been dropped. I think those beautiful parting words, right? Just trusting in, I think at the end of the day, it's just trusting in ourselves, right? Trusting in our intuition, trusting in our guidance, trusting in our lived experience, and knowing what's right for you, right? Like how life is serving you. Thank you so much. It's just been a pleasure once again to sit in your energy. Yes, it's been beautiful. If you want to know more, if you want to discuss more, pick up the Money Witches book, Money Magic. I'm telling you, as a reader, I've read it twice already. It's a game changer. It's a game changer. Please do it. I'm missing my my hard copy. I'm like on this electronic thing. Like, I need my hard copy. But pick it up. It's just so beautiful, and I love the rituals you have in there as well. Like, to me, it's just so integrated and so rich. So please check it out. If you want to know more about us, please check out money.witch. On Instagram is your primary platform, right?
Yeah, Instagram at money.witch or moneywitch.com.
Yeah, and feel free to check out my podcast. The Money Bay Podcast is on all your streaming platforms. You can find me on the Money Bay Pod or at the Retreat Maven on Instagram as well. It's been so great sharing space with each and every one of you tonight. Thank you again, Jessie Susannah, for always dropping the dope gems when it comes to us healing our relationship with money authentically. And hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
I know we will.
Have a great night, everyone.